Okay. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Geetamritam Mahat Vasude Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are almost coming to the end of the 5th chapter. Probably by next week, we'll be able to complete all the shlokas. And after that, we will have a review session. So as we said, the 5th chapter is called as Karma Sannyas Yoga. And it begins with a very profound question from a very an advanced, mature seeker. Such a question, many times doesn't come very easily for all of us, which is really, if you think about it, Arjuna's question was, should I become, a karma yogi where I'm actually acting in this world, but really giving up the attachment to any kind of fruits of action? Or should I even completely renounce all actions? That was exactly the question that Arjuna wanted to ask Lord Krishna. So why is such a question coming to a seeker? Why can't such questions come to all of us? Don't you think this Bhagavad Gita should be applicable to everybody? The struggle for all of us many, many times is that even to convert an action from a very, very normal action which we do in this world, which is, eating, sleeping, going to work, coming back, taking care of food, all this, cleaning the house, everything, that kind of normal questions itself, sometimes it's very hard for us to take it to a kind of an, I would say, quote unquote, ethical question. When I say ethical, which is, am I doing a question, an action in the way it should be, right? So for most of us, even that kind of a question sometimes is very hard for it to come by. So what to talk of such profound questions like, should I do my work as a karma yogi or should I renounce all actions? So this brings us really to the reflection time where Meena had asked this question. Meena, you like the fulfillment curve that I put together last time, which literally shows us where we spend a lot of our time. So starting with, as I said, about how our actions, many times are just in the survival kind of mode, and which is why you see this curve being rather steep, where, starting with making sure that I have enough money for my roti kapda makan. We say roti kapda makan, meaning food, shelter, and clothing. That's the survival mode. So many times, this is where a lot of the Gaussian distribution of people in this world, with 4 billion or 5 billion people, whatever, is focusing on. And from there on, we talked about how the curve is a little more steep, but we're focusing on now getting the comforts, and from there on to luxuries. And after that, we're pretty much done, actually. If I can even focus my attention as I'm moving through this curve of getting my roti kapda makan and then getting some better roti kapda makan, or maybe, improving my lifestyle and then getting better food, clothing, shelter. After that, we are pretty much done. Whatever we are doing, we are actually doing it mindlessly. We just buy better things. We just do because our neighbors are doing it, our friends are doing it, Amazon is putting more ads out on better things, or when I go to a website, something else props up, whether it's a footwear like Birkenstock or, food from a better restaurant. All that just basically clouds our mind. And we don't even realize that that is what is happening for all of us. So the struggle, what I talked about before, is really sometimes what kind of a better question I'll ask. The question is, there is no question coming out from all of us. We are so busy just collecting things and getting involved in the samsar that really no questions come to our minds. And the fact that there is such a mature question coming out of Arjuna's mouth tells us that, that's the level we at least need to go. Can I even become a karma yogi? So that being said, we talked about last time also, but in the context of our shloka, as you will see that many of my introduction to the shlokas are based upon concepts that are necessary for us in our lives to think. Basically, that is what I mean, is really to think, what is my life? Where am I going? What am I doing? Does it really make sense? All that profound questions, right? So the thing about it is, when I look at everything that I'm trying to get while I'm accumulating, I actually don't even realize that in this process of accumulation, all that pleasure that I'm getting is very, very momentary. All this pleasures, even if I take a day-to-day daily journal and I'm actually writing down, what did I have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? How did I really enjoy this? Did it last for a long period of time? Did last night's dinner, which I spent so many hours cooking, is that still lingering in my mind today? So when I look at all those kind of pleasures, we find that that pleasure that I'm getting is so momentary, so fleeting, so very, and that's why this balloon example is a great one, because that pleasure, what I get out of blowing that balloon and taking it from a child and for the child to play with it, and if it's helium filled, right, it will pop at some point. So that's how every action leading to some momentary pleasure for us doesn't stay for too long. So that pleasure which comes with it actually also has some pain associated with it. Just like these balloons, once it is blown up, and if I just take a slight prick with just my safety pin, I just touch it, pop, the balloon is going to burst. And for a child who has been holding that big balloon in his hand, he's not going to know that it's going to pop, right? And so he starts crying. And that's how our pleasures are also. Everything that I experience with that sense that there is pleasure in that object, we don't realize it also has pain associated with it. Because what has to go up, like these balloons, what has to go up has to come down. We don't realize that. Everything of that is like that. And so, even for our children, when we pop that balloon for us, balloon for them, we need to tell them ahead of time, you know what? I know it's hard to tell a child that, right? Because you really want to see that smile on the child's face when you burst that, when you make that balloon so big. But at some point, you have to tell the child, you know what? I'm going to make this balloon big for you, but I am also going to warn you that this balloon is not going to last long. If I can give that message to my child in the beginning itself, then as the child grows older, he or she will understand that that is how it is with every sensation that I will experience. And then they will realize that they're not going to count on those sense pleasures for happiness, and they will seek out bigger, better, and more lasting stuff for happiness. Sustained happiness is something that we need to work upon. And that is why these examples are so good. Matter of fact, one of the Swamis here, Swami Advainanda, actually compares this life of sense pleasures to the wallowing of the pigs in the ditches. And if you all remember, in India, this is so true. You see in certain areas, these pigs, they just enjoy being in the dirty, stinking water. And this is a comparison that is being done about how these sense pleasures are nothing like that. We are constantly like those pigs wallowing in that ditches. And we don't, unlike the pigs, we do have the ability to recognize that these pleasures are also accompanied by the pain. So even while I'm enjoying that pleasure, I have to recognize that at some point it is going to come to an end. And if I don't do that, then all the other negative qualities, like, the fear of losing something, or being jealous that maybe I don't have the bigger object or a bigger house or a bigger car, or the better promotion, all that will automatically come through, and then we get stuck in this. And this is exactly why in the shlokas that we looked at last time, we saw that dispassion or vairagyam or detachment from the objects with understanding is necessary. And therefore, the shloka which we will again look at today, which is shloka 22, which says very clearly that for a wise person, they recognize that every contact of any of our five sense organs, which is my eyes, ears, nose, skin, everything, when they are going out to contact all these objects, all those contacts, if they are not alert, that contact is like literally being lowered into this volcano or something. A volcano has all this fire bursting out flames, right? So the wise clearly recognize that that is how these objects should be looked at, that each one has a pain associated with it. And so beware and be alert. Again, that doesn't mean that we should not enjoy, but if I can have an attitude of whatever comes to me, I will enjoy it. Whatever does not come to me, I will not seek out for it. Because if my prarabdha is such that some things have to come to me, it will come. And if it doesn't come, maybe I'm not meant to get those sense pleasures. And then where do I go for my happiness? Well, I start to look inward and recognize that that happiness which I'm seeking out, which I'm superimposing on the objects and getting it back, is actually nothing but within myself. So that's the whole idea. And Meena, since you brought up this topic of roller coaster, I thought, let me put pictures here. And would you like to articulate how you feel that life is like a roller coaster?
So the enjoyment is just the temporary thing. Once you come out of it, it's gone. Totally forget about it, right?
Exactly. And I'm so glad you mentioned the word roller coaster, because it's so classic. I mean, classic in the sense you see that ups and downs happening within such a short period of time,
Yes, correct.
Within a minute, you would have actually gone to the heights and you would have been dropped also in the same way, right?
Right.
That is exactly how our life is in slow motion. It is actually nothing but a roller coaster, but in really, really slow motion.
Exactly.
And because it's in slow motion, I don't recognize that, because I become part of all that ups and downs that we go through in life, right?
Yes, correct.
And if my prarabdha is such that I have to go through all these ups and downs, so be it, because there's nothing I can do about it, actually. Nothing I can do about it in the sense from a physical level. Suppose a true example for me is I came to United States for my second boost. I came there when I took a second booster vaccine. And so far, I've never was affected by any of these vaccines. But after my second booster vaccine, my body now has become more allergic. I find that I get some rashes. Now, is this something I could have foreseen? Not really. I could not have foreseen this. But how do I handle this? Well, I recognize that I need to do something about it, and I will do about it. But I'm not going to start blaming the vaccine companies or all that, because I'm probably one of the few people who probably are affected. And looking at Google and internet, I see there is enough evidence out there, and I'll notify the vaccine company, this is what happened. But I need to make sure that I recognize and then move on, because mentally I have a choice. I have a choice on how I want to take it forward. I can actually scream at companies, hate them, or I can do something about it so that they can improve the vaccine for the next person who's going to go through it. They may not necessarily face what I face. So this is a very, very basic, simple example I gave, but pretty much the idea is what is in our own prarabdha, I cannot avoid it. I have to face it. But how I face it is up to me. So for the roller coaster rides, they always say, well, you have one thing, which is you can hold on to that bars and say, oh my God, why did I get on this? Why did I get on this? I'm sure many people might feel that when they're up in the air and when it's coming down, right? Yeah. But I also have a choice of, putting my hands up and just enjoying that whole ride, because once I'm up there, there is nothing I can do about it, right?
Yeah, unless you come.
Yeah. So, so that's that. Putting up your hands, enjoying it, is my attitude that I can take. So too in life, things come to me. And that's the advice of the wise also. The wise also, they also go through issues just like any one of us. It's not as if a person who has understood this philosophy feels that nothing is going to happen to them, or they are, they're totally hale and healthy and hearty. And I mean, you see them always smiling. And the reason is they recognize, today I'm going through this problem. Tomorrow it's not going to be there. So why do I need to go through something and have a frown on my face? It's such a temporary thing. So let me just not get bogged down by it. So I came across this beautiful paper on this, enjoying this roller coasters, how it is linked to the sensation seeking, the tendency to enjoy this intense activities, like either this roller coaster or rock climbing or bungee jumping, etc. They really are pushing the envelope for this, going through this ups and downs. Like I said, it is, compressed and fast motion, what we go through in life. And there's a whole science behind how people look into the psychology of how people love these things. And they try to incorporate these kind of sensations in not just roller coasters, but also in so many video games. And that whole gaming part of the industry is becoming sometimes more and more focused on getting these rajasic kind of happiness for everyone. And really, I mean, how far can you take this whole thing to, right? At some point, it is going to crash. And we are already seeing the effects of many of these things in the mental health issues that kids are going through, because even at a much younger age, all these fast things, all that is creating so much amount of issues of insecurity. And because the attention span is one of the things which these kind of instruments rely on. They want you to decrease. I mean, the attention span gets reduced and reduced and reduced, so much so that you're not able to concentrate on many things. And that creates this aspect of wanting that happiness, that flicker of happiness. You always want something more and more and more. So, I think we are doing the right thing by getting involved with the spiritual aspect, which is probably the only panacea for getting out of many of these things. So I want to just ask you, Meena, what are really, the kind of ups and downs we face in life? And to think about what was my reaction at that time. And after going through this Gita, do I really feel that I have a little better handle on many of these situations? So this is just a kind of a dialogue that I thought maybe we could have before we go to the next 3 or 4 shlokas.
If I have to tell you the truth, maybe 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Not more than that. Just even less than 5%.
That's fantastic. At least you're able to analyze through life and say that, 5% of my life, I really go through extreme ups, when maybe not extreme ups and downs, but to see ups and downs. But for the most part, our lives are by God's grace, by our own previous actions that we may have done through great parents. All this helps us into going through much less ups and downs, right? But the question is, what was our reaction when we went through those ups and downs before we went through Bhagavad Gita? What do you
I
think?
would say,
Uh-huh.
I would say maybe, I mean, the extreme thing, you just tend to think calm and try to reduce the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Little bit, not
Mm-hmm.
much, but little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So typically when we go through ups and downs, they actually come, I would say, most unexpectedly. We are really not prepared for it when we
Yes.
actually go through it,
Mhm. Mhm.
at least the downs. The ups, in some sense, in most cases, we would have put in some effort, and because of the effort, we are rewarded, or again based on the surrounding, the atmosphere with which we are in, we have some good, we experience some good things. But the downs, many times we're not prepared for it. So when it
Mm.
happens, sometimes it puts us into a little bit of a shock. Why me? Why did this happen? That's the kind of reaction that we get,
Yeah,
right?
but honestly, I think we can see the difference
Mm-hmm.
prior to and now. I mean, there is difference, but I would say just 5%, if I have to
Oh,
tell you the
I see
truth.
what you say.
But there
Okay.
is a difference, of course. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I mistook when you said 5% about the 5% ups and downs. But what you're saying is at least there's a 5% change. That's huge. Actually, 5% is a huge
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Really, because
It's a long way to go, for sure.
uh-huh. But being in this knowledge, and again, one thing is listening, and the other thing is watching myself every day. If I have a kind of a journal for myself, and I'm really watching, okay, today this thing happened to me. What was my reaction to it? One of the classic four examples that is always recommended by Swami Chinmayananda is, first is I really, at the end of the day, if I can sit down and I can watch, just close my eyes and see the whole day, how it went, almost like a movie. You're watching a movie, but you're watching a movie where you are on the screen, that way. You just watch as a movie and see what are the events that happened. And after that, whatever events that I felt that maybe to detect, actually, second part is to detect those events where I let my mind run a little bit. I was not very alert. So that's the second part of detection. And the third part of it is then recognizing what can I do about it? Substituting, what could I have done differently? So just to think about that way, and then just close my eyes and then go to sleep. If we do this, I think over a period of time, when even the simple action of understanding how I could have reacted better will put me into a state of an alertness when I face a situation. So I become more and more alert in the world. So many times the problems happen because I'm in a kind of an autopilot mode. The bad habits that I have accumulated over a period of time finally has to, lead to somewhere else. And I remember this very classically because in US, if I'm used to driving a little fast, for example, maybe three times, the police probably, there was no police or something, but miraculously, the fourth time, the police will show up and I will get a ticket, right? And it's not because it was my bad luck, but it is because I brought it upon myself that I drove a little faster. So some of that kind of an introspection really helps. So in Shloka 22, pretty much echoes everything that we talked about today. And it asks, we have this opportunity to ask ourselves, why is really the wise person who has understood this philosophy of life, why is such a person calm? And why is such a person not really goes through this ups and downs, which is all attributed to the fact that I get so attracted to the objects of pleasure. So that is what we saw last time. Yehi samsparshaja bhogaha dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. So Lord Krishna tells Kaunteya, who is none other than Arjuna, son of Kunti, that the reason why the wise person doesn't get totally elated or depressed, the ups and downs of life, is because he has totally recognized that these pleasures, samsparshaja bhogaha, bhoga, which is pleasures coming out of the contact of my eyes or ears or nose or mouth, the taste buds with food or with things which are beautiful, all that, they are wombs of sorrows. This is just amazing the way he said, womb of sorrow. And why did he say womb of sorrow? We will definitely see it. But he's basically saying that these, just like how it's basically, the pleasure which is a covering is covering basically a womb which is nothing but sorrow in it. That's the idea which he's saying there. That is, even one single experience of experiencing some contact with this one can actually lead to, can be a seed, can lead to multiple sorrows. Just a very simple example on this one is Netflix. Okay, now, at least when there were movie theaters or something like that, or when we were used to going to movie theaters for a movie, you would plan all these things. You would plan that, okay, this movie is being shown at this particular time. I look at my calendar, do I have the time to go for this movie or this one? You think ahead of time, you make an appointment, and then you would actually go physically there, stand in the line to buy the ticket. And then when you sit in the hall to enjoy the movie, your mind is completely in the movie because you have paid for it. You have, you're paid in terms of not just the effort and money, but you have the time, everything goes in there and you enjoy it. But now with Netflix, at the touch of a button, you can actually see a movie. And then when you see the movie, it's not as if you're focused on it or whatever. You do 10 million different things at the same time. And so the attention gets scattered. So then what happens is you feel at the end of when the movie is over that you haven't really seen the movie well. So then what do? You go back and again, you want to see the same movie. And if it is, believe me, if it's a serial, and Netflix has so many of these serials, right? You start seeing this one serial, you get attracted, and you see the next one and the next one. And pretty soon it's a binge watching. So you see, just this one aspect of a click of a button now has led to the amount of time that has gone into being taken away into such a mindless activity, right? So that's what this womb of sorrow means, that one seed can actually sow this aspect of taking time away from Bhagavad Gita, for example, or where really my human potential really is, where I have to recognize who am I, why did I come here, and where is really this happiness and peace that I'm looking for outside? Where is that? I need to understand this, right? So that's what we do see, whether it is in a food, beverage here, I'm just putting Starbucks as an example, or in a beautiful house or a great car. We have actually mixed up that happiness in many of this. And because of this aspect of it, we are unable to really focus our mind even more on this because, as I said, Netflix is the example. our one habit of starting in the beginning has now led to such a strong impression within myself, called this vasana, so that even if Netflix was not there and I go somewhere, what I do is I look for it and I see somehow if I can get this, and I get attracted to it. So that's the whole thing. And the mix-up is, as I said, that happiness which I'm looking outside is actually within myself. But I have grown accustomed, I have cheated my own self into thinking that that happiness is only in that object. The happiness is in that wonderful mocha or latte or whatever. And I have to go to the West Coast or whatever. If you look at the house, it's more like a West Coast house, beautiful sky, clear skies, maybe Arizona or something like that. And, you're there, and or in this car. So Krishna is advising Arjuna and indirectly us that, you know what, try to become wise here. Don't be otherwise, and recognize that this sense contact is not the true source of joy for you. The sense contact of this coffee or anything. If it comes to you, yes, enjoy it, but don't go seeking for it, and just, enjoy it and then leave it and then move on. So then he goes into the root cause of the mind rushing into the world. Why does it happen? And that is what is the idea behind why these things happen, is because we do not have a clear goal on what we want from life. We think that we want all these things, whether it's money, power, objects, but we have not clearly understood that the happiness that we want is actually totally within myself. All these objects which are giving me this happiness and everything are essentially inert. I mean, this phone, which is so much which I'm tied to, is actually very inert. I mean, there is nothing in it. It is not talking to me, or actually Siri talks to me. So maybe there is some talk, but even that is being manufactured by somebody like me, right? So why am I being so stuck to it? Why don't I understand that? That's the part that Krishna is telling Arjuna, that you need to think about this. And only when I start to think about it and I come to that understanding, and it's only through understanding that I can actually develop that dispassion or vairagyam, or something where which needs to be done, right? So this dispassion or independence from the objects is really talked about in the next shloka here. So we did this last time. And just one thing to think about is, before we go to the next one, because this shloka is really a very powerful shloka, something that needs to be reflected upon. I know I used the word meditation last time, which is not the right word, which is reflection, to really understand. And a question might come is, why is a wise person not attracted to external pleasure or objects? Do those people really just suppress it and say that, oh my God, no, I'm not supposed to do this. It is bad for me, and therefore I'm going to get rid of it? No, it is not suppression at all. Such a person totally recognizes that as much as I'm trying to get this pleasure, by here, I'm never ever going to get this. Even if I go to heaven or something like that, it is never going to be a pleasure for me. So it is totally with this understanding. And as we saw previously also, only with understanding this can happen. And the fact that this has a beginning and an end. That's the important thing. So Adi and Antavanta Kaunteya. It has a beginning and an end. That classic example, as I spoke about before, was the aspect of the balloon. So just like the balloons, just like anything for that matter, even simple things as gulab jamun. God gave the example of holige or obbattu last time. This wonderful Puran Poli which was served in my Annakshetra here. Even as you have it, you recognize, yes, this is great, but I have to be careful about it. Not just the fact that because it leads to sugar and all that, but also because I can get hooked to it. And the next time I'm going to look for it. So how do I do this? I have to recognize that it is, I enjoy it and I just leave it. So this brings to actually a whole science of happiness, which I thought we would do today as a kind of a little bit of an exercise. But I think I'll take it up for next week's reflection, which we will probably think about it a little more, because I wanted to share this beautiful bhashya in Shankar Bhashya, Bhagavan Shankaracharya's bhashya. There's this beautiful quote here, or he makes this thing, which again, we will do it later. So moving on to then shloka number 23. So here he points out exactly why does the mind rush into the material world, and what is it that we need to watch out for, and what is the cause? What does it lead to? So he explains this beautifully by bringing out two critical things here. One of them is, of course, our desires. So our desire, which leads us to this. And when the desire for something is really strong, simple example, I've had a good dinner. I feel like I want to get an ice cream after my dinner. So I remember that we have Guernseys in Novi, right? And I have my eye on that pistachio ice cream, which Guernseys has, which is so good. And I rush out of the door. And then I don't realize that Guernseys actually closes at 9 o'clock. And this is true, actually. Guernseys closes very early. I don't know about summer hours, but and now, your mind is so much on the fact that your mind is totally thinking about this wonderful pistachio ice cream that I can get, and how I'm going to sit in front of the TV and enjoy the show. So then I go there and I see, you're just there 2 minutes after 9 o'clock, and they say, I'm sorry, but we are closed. And you're like, it's only 2 minutes. Can you just let me get this? No, they have their policy, right? So there is anger now, frustration. How did this happen? Why did this happen? So with that, the shloka 23 basically talks about, and we'll chant it. Shaknoti haiva yasodum. Shaknoti haiva yasodum. Praksharira vimokshanat. Praksharira vimokshanat. Kama krododbhavam vegam. Kama krododbhavam vegam. Sayukta sasukhi naraha. Sayukta sasukhi naraha. So he's talking about those two impulses, about how the desire and anger. He says these are the two main forces, and he calls them by Vegam. Vega, which is the storm of the force, or an impulse or a force, or however you want to say it. That two are the ones which, if somebody has a wise person, can recognize it and takes care of it Literally, you got to take care of it while you have this physical body, you know. Such a person, so he's saying Shaknoti, only such a person is capable of Shaknoti in this body itself, this body which has been given to me, which so many times I don't even recognize what a wonderful equipment that has been given to me to enjoy everything and to fulfill whatever ambitions, goals I have. So Shaknoti, capable in this body, iha eva, in this body itself, a person who can recognize, who can withstand before the Sharira, where before the Sharira departs, Vimokshanat, and we will spend a little time understanding each one of these. Vimokshanat. What are the two things that he needs to withstand is Kama and Krodhodbhavam. Kama Krodhodbhavam, Kama Krodhodbhavam Vegam. So which is born out of desire and anger. Prakshay Vimoksha Kama Krodhodbhavam Vegam Sayukta Sasuki. So if a person can withstand any kind of these two things, which is desire and anger, that impulse, such a person has the, has this clean ticket. Sa yuktaha, sa sukhi naraha. So such a person is truly a person who is the right candidate to enjoy the happiness within himself or herself. Saha yuktaha, such a person is a yogi, and such a person is an extremely happy, blissful, sukhi naraha. Again, very important words. If we don't focus on these words, we will just take it for granted. But here he's saying such a person is really a human being. Naraha, man. Here, naraha indicating man, which is, of course, synonymous to say all human being, a human being. So, sa sukhihi, sa yuktaha, and that such a person is really a human being. So that is the idea behind what he's trying to say here. So essentially, we find that these desire and anger, as I gave this example of this ice cream to get from Nihi's, they are basically desire and anger, just nothing but two sides of the same coin. The impulse, it comes to us, and if I don't recognize it, it can lead to a kind of an anger. And you can see this with so many different examples, the rage that you see on the highways. Somebody wants to cut somebody off, but the other person is not letting him, and it leads to a lot of anger. So in all these cases, the desire and anger are nothing but two sides of the same coin, and that needs to be taken care of. That is the root cause for pretty much the problems that we face in the world, either individually or collectively. So what's the solution? It is kind of a catch-22 situation. Unless I see this desire which is coming to me and I catch it right away, and I immediately turn it somewhere else, then there is unless I direct it inward, it will always constantly be looking outward to satisfy it. But the catch-22 is, if I were to redirect it inside. So if I say that, okay, I see that I'm getting angry here, or I see that I have this desire for the ice cream, whatever, and immediately I don't give something else for it to latch on to, then it'll again either go outside looking for something else, or it'll lead to some kind of a suppression. So this aspect on how I'm going to turn it inward is it's a very interesting proposition. And I tried it yesterday, and I have to say that I'm happy that I succeeded. Yesterday was actually a holiday here, and I was thinking about the shloka, and I was thinking, what kind of preparation I should do, and how can I bring this example. So it was a holiday, and I knew that when I go for lunch, for example, after lunch, I'm going to feel definitely very sleepy, and I am going to take a nap. And if I take a nap, I might, lose some time in how I'm going to prepare. So what I did was, before going for lunch, I said, okay, I'm going to take my flute and I'm going to practice. So I put myself down, okay, 1 o'clock I go for lunch, 1:30 I have to come back and I have to practice my flute. So lo and behold, when I went there for my Anakshetra, I started, I took my plate and everything. And many times I would just spend some time maybe talking to people. And if I did not put this time down for myself, I would have just spent the time to 2 o'clock talking to people. But I knew I have to come back. So in my mind, I was like, 1:30, I have to do this. So I come back to my room. And when I come to my room, yes, I was feeling sleepy, and I was so tempted to just have a short nap. But then I had made it a point to keep my flute in front of me. And I said, okay, I need to practice this. And you know what? The mind listened to it. And I was feeling so proud of myself. And I'm not saying this to boast, because this doesn't happen at all for me. And many times, I am not good with keeping with my time. But I said, okay, this time it happened. And I thought, that's the thing that I can tell, is that it does work. So in the context of this shloka, the mind needs something to latch on to. We need to give that mind. So this example of the ladder here is, I need to give up my lower rung and place my foot firmly on the top of this one in order for me to climb up. So this is a classic, actually, Swami Chinmayananda's example, which is always keep the mind, give the mind something better, so that it will loosen its hold on something that I want to give up. If I don't give this, then it is never going to rise up. So that's the catch-22, is that, I have to do something about it for it to move forward. If I don't, then I'm caught up in the circle of going round and round. So this brings us to the shloka 24 now. We are looking into then a kind of a very illuminating discovery, which we are looking into here. So the next 3 verses, we are looking into the realized state from the sage perspective. So far, we've been looking at how I can look at a wise person and learn from them. But now we are looking at it from the perspective of the sage who has understood this philosophy. So we need always something to compare to, right? We need role models. We need to see how they would live their life. So let us read that. Yontas sukhontara ramaha. Yontas sukhontara ramaha. Tathantar jyotirevayah. Tathantar jyotirevayah. Sayogi brahma nirvanam. Sayogi brahma nirvanam. Brahma bhutoti gacchati. Brahma bhutoti gacchati. So, from the perspective of the sage now, who is this person? What is that person's personality? So he says here, Yaha, such a person who has understood this, such a person is Antaha Sukhaha. Such a person is experiencing complete inner bliss. And even this word yaha is very interesting to note, yaha is not just, somebody who is only a Hindu or something like that. It can be anybody. It can be a Christian, it could be a Muslim, it can be a black person, a white person, a brown person. It can be, like Vidya Vinay Sampani, that example. It can be a great, educated, very humble person. It can be an uneducated person. It just doesn't matter. Such a person, once he or she has understood the philosophy, such a person revels in his inner self, and such a person is basically recognizes that he or she has that knowledge within himself. Such a person is at Antar Jyoti. Antah means inside, Jyoti means light. So Antar Jyoti is that light himself. Yaha, again, that same person, Saha, such a person is a true seeker who has recognized that Brahma Nirvana, has recognized that Brahman, which is within herself or himself, is the same thing outside, and that it is nothing but that eternal essence. And such a person is, one would consider as a totally liberated person. Such a person is the one who has attained that moksha. And so Brahma Bhuta, who is identified, Adhikachiti, has attained that state of nirvana. So very powerful, again, shloka, a great shloka for meditation to understand who is that person. Such a person is a person who has recognized the inner bliss, that knowledge, everything is within himself or herself. And such a person recognizes that aspect. So there is great bliss, happiness, or you might say rejoicing in such a person. Anything and everything the person does with so much amount of beauty, perfection, everything. And the way such a person interacts with everybody, there is absolutely no, it's just pure love. There's absolutely no hatred, no judgment, nothing. And so such is the quality of a person. And such a person experiences that happiness. Such a person does not expect anything from the outside world. And the idea that something other than herself or himself will make him happy, such idea itself is not there at all. And therefore, such a person doesn't even crave for anything, and is always very positive, and is just spreads happiness wherever he or she goes.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So you're saying who is a happy person. So are you trying to say who is self-content and who is happy with whatever that he or she has? Can you give next week? Can you please give some examples of some?
Sure, so, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. To get some more idea about.
Absolutely. We can also, along with giving examples or talking about people who have attained that highest level of bliss.
Yes, exactly. That's what
that is one way of looking at it. But also we should think about people who have who might be living in the world like any one of us, and who also experience that happiness, and how do they interact with the world for that same happiness? Because that also we need. It's just like I gave that example of that ladder, right? Sometimes you may say, oh my God, that person, maybe it's possible for that person. They didn't have any problems that I'm going through or whatever. One may say that, but give me also examples who may be there 25% or 50%. Tell me what that is. How does that look?
Okay.
So we will maybe talk about that too.
Okay, thank you.
So let us see how we do next week. If we are able to complete the whole thing, I think we might. No, I think we need one more, because up to shloka number 26 covers one full thought. The last 3 shlokas are actually a lead-in to the next chapter, which is a chapter which probably all of us really look forward to all the time, which is the chapter on meditation. But in order to introduce meditation, Lord Krishna actually gives a prelude to it in chapter 5 itself with about 3 shlokas. So we will see. Maybe we need two more sessions of this chapter 5. So with that, we'll stop here. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate. Purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Meenakshi.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. See you next week. Hari Om.